Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to episode 29 of the Productive Wellbeing Show. I am so excited to be here with you. I am your host for this show, Abigail Barnes, and today my special guest is the amazing Chris Paton. Now, Chris is a former Lieutenant Colonel in the Royal Marines and Managing Director of Quirk Solutions. It's a management consultancy that specialises in business resilience, crisis leadership, and execution success. Now, these guys have worked with organisations like Mercedes, Shell, Lloyds Corporation, Linklaters, Waitrose, as well as the NHS and SMEs. So today we are going to have a conversation around three areas. And as you're joining, let us know where you're joining from. If you're watching on the replay, say replay. I'm just trying to get up the feed on LinkedIn so I can actually see you and get your questions. And if you sort of have anything that you want to ask us about, then you just put it into the comments. And Chris and I are going to sort of talk about three rough areas today, because Chris, a conversation with him could go on for a very long time, him being the expert in so many things. So, Chris, thank you so much for being with us today.
No problem at all. Delighted to be here.
Let's dive into the first question. And in this first question, I guess you can give us a little bit of background to yourself, like why you now do what you do versus what you've done in the past. So the first kind of area that we've said we'll talk about today is really navigating this crisis, and what lessons we can get navigating this crisis and get from you based on the fact that your background is the Royal Marines.
Yeah. It's an area that I think that certainly around crisis management or crisis leadership, as you asked around that specific question. I find the framework that the Royal Marines use is really useful, which is first to understand, first to adapt, first to overcome. And that's the mantra, if you like, that they operate by. And I think it's just a useful tool for any organisation, commercial or military or private sector, public sector, to think about. Because if you understand what's going on, then you can define the objectives you want to try and achieve out of that. And that then allows you to adapt really, really rapidly. How did I find myself in this particular position is because whilst I was serving in the Royal Marines, I had no intention really of leaving the Royal Marines. I'd done just shy of 19 years.
Wow.
And I was sent through a business article by a friend who's a business strategist and was a lecturer at Cranfield University at the time. He said, "What do you think of this article?" And it was around how some situations are so complex and fast moving, you can't really plan for them. I ranted on my keyboard back to him for about an hour. And the long and the short of it is, I, through him, accidentally got published in the Harvard Business Review of how you plan in fluid and dynamic situations. And that then led to people saying, "Can we get some advice? Can you come and speak at our conferences?" So I found myself on a speaking circuit, and essentially the business evolved from there. And I've been doing this now for the last 9 years commercially. And I think that the current situation has been interesting for me personally in what I have learned about myself and my own business as well, in that first to understand and adapt, in so much as everything that we've done for the last 9 years has either been helping organizations to pressure test and to stress test their plans to make sure they're more robust and everybody understands what's going to happen within them so they don't make mistakes and costly mistakes, or we've been delivering management and leadership training. But all of that's been done face to face. Now, in the current situation, obviously, that's not necessarily something we can do. So we have had to adapt as an organization. And we now have virtual pressure tests. We now have online leadership and management training being delivered by my team, and many of whom are ex-military as well. And I think it's not necessarily about having products on the shelf good to go that you can deploy in different situations. It's more about having an agile organization with that agile culture, who are prepared to be very adaptable. And maybe it's because my team are ex-military, I don't know, but their ability to step up to the plate through these last few weeks and to pivot onto an online and virtual offering has been incredible, and I'm really proud of all of them.
Amazing. And do you think that this foundation that you've got has helped your business to be able to see the crisis in a different way? Your team, like you mentioned, that your team is quite a lot ex-military. Also, do you think it was a foundational building block, and that this is something that you are then sharing with the organisations that you're working with? Because obviously not all of us have got that ex-military background. So
I don't think it's necessarily purely ex-military, but I do think it comes from an experience of pressure and of adversity. I think that anybody that goes through a period of adversity or of challenge and comes out the other side, they come out the other side much more resilient, because they have learned more about themselves. They've learned more about how they operate. They've learned how to manage themselves in those situations. Maybe they've also seen people around them in those high pressure, high intensity situations, and they've learned how to manage other people and to interact with other people. So I think it comes down to those sorts of experiences, and this is something I think that commercial organizations or indeed, the public sector organizations miss out on. The military or sports teams spend a huge amount of time training, and they actually, for an actually relatively short amount of time of performing, if you like, or competing, if you want to call it that. Whereas most commercial organizations are so busy doing business as usual and day to day, they feel they haven't got the time to train. They feel like they haven't got the time to adapt people, and it's seen as kind of like a tick box exercise. Career progression and development for individuals is something that a business has to do. Whereas actually, training properly and going through those sorts of pressure tests or scenario planning tests that we would do to put yourselves under a simulated pressure then really helps when the pressure comes for real. So I think a lot of it's about training and experience.
Yeah, because I guess in that way you're conditioning yourself to be able to respond when the situation comes up. So quite a lot of our audience are in support roles, so they're supporting senior leaders in this crisis right now, and their assistants, executive assistants, personal assistants, and maybe some of them are not getting that feedback. They're not getting that conversational flow that they used to get. So what's really going on in the minds of these leaders right now in these kind of unprecedented times?
For a lot of the leaders, they will be feeling the pressure of having to come up with all the answers themselves. Some of them will not have been in a crisis management situation before. It might be that actually throughout their careers, things have gone along in a relatively stable manner. And although there's been bumps in the road, there's not been anything quite so significant as we're facing right now. And for many of them, therefore, they now are feeling that sort of loneliness, if you like, of being the senior leadership, because they feel that they can't share their emotions with others. They feel like they can't share their concerns. They will feel like they can't turn around and say, I don't really know how to do this and to navigate our way out of this, because that's their perception of what a leader should be. But for any followers and devotees of Brené Brown like me, who understand that vulnerability is a hugely important part of leadership, and it helps everybody, not just the leader, for the leader to be able to say, right, what can we do about this and how can we go about it, and seeking advice from the rest of the team and from the rest of the organization, so that you come up with better ideas because you've got more brains thinking. You're sharing the pressure of where we might go, and you end up designing a solution that more people in the organization want to follow, because we're essentially going to go into, and we're going to transition back to some sort of sense of work. This is going to be like a global transformation and change program, with everybody doing the same thing. So the one thing you want is for the organization to buy into where you are going. Well, nothing brings that buy-in more than if those individuals have been involved in designing the process themselves.
Amazing. And then that leads us on to the second point of sort of this conversation is beyond lockdown. Now, you did an amazing webinar on Friday called Beyond Lockdown and the Transition Back to Work. And so for anybody who missed that webinar, Chris has literally said, if you send him a personal message on LinkedIn with your email address, he will send you the replay link for that. But just for those of us sort of that missed the webinar, and just in a nutshell, what do you see sort of the next phase with this transition back to work? I mean, UK is reviewing it on the 6th of May. Reading in the papers that some organisations are being told to kind of start to get your people ready. What are your sort of thoughts and comments around?
Yeah, there's a few elements there. I think the easy thing to do is to get drawn into detailed planning. Who is going to come back? When are they going to come back? What functions are they going to serve? And there is an importance behind that, and it's entirely valid, because inevitably, as we are allowed to turn the taps on a little bit with a return to work, it's going to create the opportunity for the virus to spread again, because there'll be more people moving around, more people using transport, etc., etc. So there is a degree of risk involved there, and that detailed planning therefore needs to take account of that risk, absolutely. But there's also issues, I think, around people's psychological and mental well-being. Individuals that will have spent a lot of time at home or working from home perhaps, or working remotely or even furloughed, will be quite fearful of coming back out from what is they have now built up to be a safe environment around themselves. And stepping outside that door is going to feel really fearful, and they're going to be anxious about doing it. So you've also then potentially got some organizations where they still had people operating the whole time throughout, and then they've had some people working from home. So how are you going to bring back these two populations of individuals, where some see themselves as the heroes who battled through, and others who feel like, well, I just stayed at home, and what did you do? So bringing those two together is going to be really quite key. And the military concepts that I talked about within the webinar on Friday of decompression and creating some sort of stepping stone between where we are now and normalcy in the future, whenever it may happen, is going to be really important. And allowing those groups of people to come together, to share, to talk to one another about their experiences of the situation we've been through, so that we all understand one another, because understanding builds trust, and trust builds tempo. So if you want to be an effective and highly dynamic, high-performing organization, once this is all over, whenever it happens, and we don't really know when it will, then thinking about that decompression process to transition people back into a work environment is going to be really important.
There's lots of stages to this, isn't there? Wow.
Yeah.
So the final question is really focusing around your tips and strategies for maximizing this time that we've got now. So really the ethos of the show, if you like, the productivity and the well-being. What are you doing on a daily basis to stay ready and stay mentally sort of in the game for what is to come next?
Initially, I wasn't. Initially, I'll be very honest, I fell foul of dropping into that crisis management situation of feeling that I needed to pull everything back to the core, back to me, get controls going on, understand how this might impact, and start to work really fast on what needed to happen next. And therefore, I think my own well-being wasn't at a good level during that first couple of weeks, because I was really doing too much. As you then start to give yourself a bit of a kick in the pants and realize, look, if we're going to get through this, then this could be, a bit more of a marathon. And as we start to realize and you start to benchmark against other countries going through this pandemic, and you see how long some of them are locked down for, you realize, well, I now need to start to do something different. I need to shift gears. I've maybe needed to do that initial real hard sprint, but now I need to shift gears and get myself into a different place. So I think, first of all, it required me to recognize that within myself, which was a challenge, because I'm not that sort of person. I'm more of a just keep going until I basically fall off the edge of a cliff. So that was a challenge in itself. And then essentially it's come down to having some form of routine. And I found having routine and discipline really useful for me. So up first thing, and I live in quite a remote area, so it's it was quite nice. I can go for a walk around some fields without seeing anybody at all. So up first thing, walk the dog, clear my head, get a bit of exercise, get that fresh air, and then I have a routine as to how I approach the tasks I'm going to do through the day. In terms of, I find personally for me, I feel better once I've essentially got a clear desk. So I will go through, first of all, anything that I've got hanging on or lingering over that I've been meaning to action, get all of that done, because now I feel I can focus. And then I look at the big tasks that I've got for the day, but I also break that day up with, again, some exercise, maybe getting out on my bike or being outside, or anything else that gives me a bit of a break. The Mel that I was talking to, Melanie Fitzpatrick, that I was talking to on Friday in our webinar, she says that she has in her diary still commute to work at both ends of the day, because even though she's working from home, that commute time is her reflection time and her downtime. So I thought that was a really, really interesting and clever way to do it. But yeah, for me, it's about understanding how I want to run each day and trying to have the discipline to stick to that.
And are you a meditator?
I wouldn't say that I meditate per se, but certainly things like breathing techniques, and just trying to focus. I definitely do, and trying to kind of take myself out of the immediacy of the situation that's around me. Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, guys, as I said at the start of this, a conversation with Chris could last a very long time. So we've just really focused it in on 3 things. So I highly recommend, if you're not connected with Chris, that you connect with him on LinkedIn and check out what they do at Quirk Solutions. Get that replay from his Friday webinar, because it was freaking awesome. And we'll also leave the link to the Harvard Business Review as well in the comments, because I think it's a really interesting article, and sort of the ideas and the understanding for people of how the military do it and how it can, be shared in business as well. So if anyone has any questions as well, leave them in the comments, and Chris and I will sort of be coming back to this over the next sort of few days. And if you're watching this on the replay as well, leave the comments in there and we will get to them. But other than that, it has been so awesome. And thank you so much, Chris, for your time. And it's really funny, I keep saying this every time I have an amazing guest, is that this is the blessing in many ways of COVID-19, is that I get conversations with you guys that can be shared to the wider world, because everybody is usually so busy, head down in action, that we don't even have time to have conversations. So this is like the blessing that comes with the curse. But thank you so much for your time. And
very welcome.
Guys, until next time, don't forget, stay safe, stay well, wash your hands. I'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock, when we are going to be talking about the 888 and scheduling for sanity. So join me for that at 11. And until then, I will see you again next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.